Welcome back, everyone. It is Ray Hall here on Ray Hall Talking College Ball. The long wait is over. We are officially at week 0, and in typical Ray Hall fashion, we're getting our predictions in just before the buzzer, so you can go and hit those future bets at the absolute value that you need to before this season starts. Um, Real quick, just wanted to say that the YouTube live streaming platform is the way I'm going to be getting out my videos now. So please make sure you're liked, subscribed, come in there, drop a comment, ask your questions that way so that we can make sure we're getting max participation for this 2026 college football season. Um, Additionally, not only will I be on YouTube live giving the updates and producing my videos, but I will be going live Sunday or Saturday nights. I think around, I'm gonna say 11:30 Eastern time, 10:30 local time for me to give you my instant reactions for the week. And then additionally, you can expect videos on Tuesday. Monday and Wednesday. So Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday night is when you're going to be able to tap into YouTube and connect with me. But with all of that out of the way, that the housekeeping done, let's kind of get into the predictions. It's going to be a shorter video today, kind of just going through what I expect out of these conferences. And we're doing it in alphabetical order, so there's no reason for bias of, oh, he talked about this conference first or that conference first. But I didn't go full write-ups for every single conference, kind of just highlighted the ones I really wanted to get after in a sense. And some of them are going to be deeper, more in depth. Obviously, probably talking about the Power Four ones a little bit more, opposed to spending too much time on the G6 conferences. But don't worry, you're still going to get your time, G6 conference fans. I'm still going to talk about it. But first, we're going to start with the American Conference. American Conference looks a little bit different this year, obviously, with Memphis and USF kind of and Tulane, the three powerhouses of the last couple 2 or 3 years, changing out and getting new head coaches. Obviously, you got Huff at Memphis, Hartline at USF, and Tulane's losing Summerall to Florida. So really, what's the point of continuity there? What's the team we can look to and be like, hey, I can rely on this team? And look no further than UTSA and Jeff Traylor. Their odds are plus 450. They're the second favorite to win the conference, just behind Navy. No disrespect to the service academies or the Navy football team, but I just like what UTSA brings to the table, specifically Owen McCown, son of quarterback and Josh McCown. He's been there, it seems like forever. When I was going through my conference prep, I had to double check and make sure that he was still actually like on the team, because I was like, I feel like he's been there since pre-COVID. But not only do they have Owen McCown, they also have the Alamo Dome, tough place to play. Mentioning that, Navy and South Florida, those are probably two of their toughest games they'll play this year in conference, and they get them both at home. And additionally, they'll play Tulane on the road, but obviously it's a revamped roster there. And they'll get Memphis on the road, or Tulane on the road, a week after they come and play Memphis. So good spot for them. Really expecting them to be able to score points. They return 4 out of 5 starters in the secondary. Expecting to be able to create some turnovers and then be able to capitalize on those turnovers with 7 more than 3 and more than 0. So UTSA at plus 450 is my pick for the American. All right, moving to the ACC. No surprise, it's kind of Miami's conference to lose. And then also, stop me if you heard this one before, but Miami still hasn't won the ACC. So is it really a guarantee? Should they really be the favorites? Well, if you look at this roster compared to other rosters, it's kind of hard to pick against them. They have Mark Fletcher returning, big back, tough to tackle. Obviously, Malachi Tony returning, Darian Mensah, the quarterback transfer from Duke, Cooper Barcate coming over with him from Duke. And then if you know Mario Cristobal, you know his teams, he's always going to get competent offensive line play. So having time and being able to actually move the football on the ground is not going to be an issue for them. And then additionally, Corey Heatherman. I think I've said it last year in my preseason predictions, but in my opinion, he's kind of the next man up for one of these coordinators to get a job. The work he did when he was at JMU, and then when he followed Sig to Indiana, and now at Miami, what he's been able to accomplish there. Miami's defense was putrid in 2024. I mean, remember Cam Ward, I would have to score 50, 60 points every single week for them to even have a chance. So for them to be able to kind of almost rely on their defense last year when instead of having to rely on offense, specifically Carson Beck, was really impressive. And I think they take another step this year. It won't be as big as a progress step from 2024 to 2025, but another year in the system, I think the Canes defense takes another step. So the only school I really see, there's a couple of schools that have a chance. SMU, obviously. I'm not a big SMU believer. I think the quarterback Jenkins, I think he's a great athlete, but I think he's pretty limited when it comes to the passing attack. And I believe he was a freshman at the time, but that 2024 playoff game against Penn State still just burned in my mind. And then there's obviously Clemson's in the conference. I'm not fully sold on Clemson one way or the other. Next week, you'll probably get a better feel on how I feel about Clemson. I have a take. I'm keeping it for next week because this week it's all about conference championships and then the week 0 preview that I'm going to be putting on Friday. But next show, Monday, when I go live again, expect me to start having some uncomfortable conversations about Clemson. But the one school I wanted to highlight that if you want more value than the plus 150 you're getting with Miami is Louisville. Really the big question here is how good is their scouting department? 13 of their 22 starters are projected to be from the transfer portal. Obviously headlined by Lincoln Kienholz, the quarterback that transferred from Ohio State after losing out to Julian Sayin. But another good thing for them is their toughest conference game. One, it's early, so it's SMU week 3 at home. And if you know me, you know I'm a Jeff Brom stan. Love Jeff Brom. Love what he does with quarterbacks. They still have Brown there at running back who can really tote the rock. And don't be surprised if it's week 10 and they're 8-0 going into a matchup against Georgia Tech and Brent Key. And we're kind of looking at Louisville as a top 15 team. The other thing to highlight, they don't play Miami. So both teams could theoretically win all of their ACC games, not face each other after their first matchup, be in the ACC championship, which would definitely be something to monitor if you have the ACC champion, ACC championship between two teams that are 8-0. Sorry, that dog's going crazy right now. Let's see what we got going on outside. Yep, just someone trying to get home. Yeah. All right. Moving forward to the Big Ten. My pick is Oregon plus 260. I think it's really going to be a Dante Moore Heisman campaign type year. He's going to have the workable schedule, but still tough enough teams and moments to kind of get afforded those big opportunities. And then the real question for them, two big questions, I guess kind of three, but two of them go together, is how does Oregon bounce back after losing both coordinators? Obviously, Lupo goes to Cal, and then you have God, why can't I think of his name on the top of my head? The offense coordinator went to Kentucky. It's going to kill me. I can't think of his name. But anyways, those are the two big questions. Can they backfill their coordinator positions? And then additionally, how's the offensive line going to hold up? They have obviously DeCorney Moore and Stewart out at wide receiver. So they have the playmakers all over the field. Their defense is filled with guys. Can the offensive line kind of progress? Can it be good enough to give Dante more time to actually hit these stud receivers they have? And can the coordinators coach their guys up? I'm not as much worried about the defensive side. Obviously, Dan Lanning cut his teeth as a defensive coordinator on Kirby at Georgia. So he knows how to coach the X's and O's on that side of the ball. But it's really about the offense. Can they put more in a position to really win games, take over games, and kind of be the strength of that team? You may be asking why I didn't pick Ohio State. One, Ohio State, I want to say it's a chalky pick. It kind of is a chalky pick. I mean, they're a number 1 ranked team or number 2 ranked team, depending on where you look. But in all in all reality, I'm not sold on Arthur Smith as their offensive coordinator. I wasn't really sold on Hartline last year as offensive coordinator. We kind of saw the step back it took after Chip Kelly left. So I think Julian Saint's a talented quarterback. They obviously have Jeremiah Smith, but who's next from Jeremiah Smith? I haven't heard great things about Ennis out of camp. They still have Bo Jackson there. He's going to be able to tote the rock. Their offensive line is going to be filled with talent. But when you kind of get into these margin games, it's going to be hard for them to it's hard for me to put my trust into them just yet. And that it's really just because there's a couple questions there. Then obviously Indiana not being mentioned here could be a big surprise. I think they're the third highest ranked team or third favorite to win the Big Ten. They're returning a lot of production on the defensive line. They got those two guys come back with this extra year eligibility. They also lost D'Angelo Pons, who was pretty much a half a field eraser last year for them. Coordinator is very talented. He'll be able to coach his guys up. The big question mark I have, though, is on the offensive side of the ball, and it's for Josh Hoover. I'm not doubting Josh Hoover. His talent is there. I loved him at TCU. I still love him at Indiana. I think he was a great acquisition in the transfer portal for him, kind of what he can do with those different arm angles and quick decisions, quick snap throws. It's going to be perfect for the RPO scheme they run there. But the one thing that kind of worries me if I'm an Indiana fan or Indiana better is Josh Hoover, and I think, 28 starts, had 31 turnovers at TCU the past 2 years, 17 in 2024, 14 in 2025. And that can get him in trouble. I think Sonny Styles even mentioned it when he was, Sonny Dykes, not Sonny Styles, not the linebacker for Ohio State last year. Sonny Dykes mentioned it in a press conference this year, kind of throwing like parting shots like, hey, if we don't turn the ball over at the quarterback position, we'll be a lot better on offense. And that's an obvious knock that you can put on Hoover. But when you look at what Mendoza was able to do last year, I don't want to say it was an underwhelming season. I mean, he won the Heisman, won a national championship. Obviously, he has that moment against Penn State, throwing that touchdown the back of the end zone to Cooper. He has that run in the national championship game, very talented quarterback. But the thing that I liked the most that Mendoza did is he played within the system, and he only turned the ball over 6 times. So he didn't set his defense up on short fields, and he kind of kept his offense on schedule. If Josh Hoover's able to kind of mitigate those turnovers, then I wouldn't be surprised to see Indiana go back to back. But that's the biggest question there. And Josh Hoover's better year, 14 turnovers in 2025. That's still over double what Mendoza had last year. So if he can kind of mitigate that, he'll be good to go. I think the coordinator will help him out there, but then also he's going to play tougher competition than the Big Ten. So we'll have to see there. All right. Next conference is the Big 12. I'm going with BYU at plus 550. I love Bear Bachmeier. I love LJ Martin. I think they're going to be able to run the ball, hard-nosed football, play tough defense. I mean, their defense is filled with 27-year-olds that are still have eligibility and like not any like backwards games of like, oh, well, this was a redshirt year, that was an injury year. It's just they have those mission trips. They have grown men on the field. Kalani Sitake stayed. I think there's a lot of momentum around that program. I think part of them feels kind of slighted last year for not making it to the playoff. To which I'll say is, hey, you got 2 shots at Texas Tech. Probably didn't deserve to be in, but who am I to say that? I think Texas Tech is also kind of the easy pick here. I'm just not sold on Will Hammond. There's kind of like I think I heard John Gruden saying it. It was regards to NFL, but he was saying it where, hey, if they bring in competition, that's like your first sign that they're not happy with what that position's at. Because if they were happy and content with where that position's at, they wouldn't bring in competition. So they went out trying to get Brendan Sorsby. Obviously, there was that whole offseason scandal regarding the gambling, and now he's not there. And just today, they backfilled and got Tommy Castellanos. Now, if you go to the Texas Tech message boards, or you talk to them on X, the Everything app, they'll say, oh, he's just, insurance and going to be like red zone packages. Okay, cool. They still went out and said, hey, we're not good at this position. Let's get someone else in this room. So that's where I think they kind of spoke for themselves on that. And then it would not be a Ray Hall show if I didn't mention Rich Rod and the West Virginia Mountaineers as a potential flyer. I think they're plus 5,000 right now. But the Mountaineers, if you want to talk about running the damn ball, the Mountaineers are going to run the damn ball. It's going to be really awesome to kind of see that offense this year. They have Hawkins, the Oklahoma transfer, who was knocked as not being able to throw the ball, which is very accurate. But gosh, is he athletic? And if you're a Rich Rod quarterback, you just need to kind of be able to have the threat of throwing the ball. But if you can run it like he can on the ground, I'm excited to see what they do. Plus, they have Zach Alley. I already mentioned Corey Heatherman. It's kind of like the next man up. I think Zach Alley's got a little bit more seasoning he needs to do, but he's one of my favorite defensive coordinators and young coaches and young coordinators in college football right now. So look out for them. Plus 5,000, absolute flyer. Schedule isn't even easy, but I just love Rich Rod and I love Zach Alley. So I'm excited to watch them play football. All right, next we'll move to the Conference USA. This one's pretty easy for me. Blue Hens, Delaware Blue Hens at plus 600. Nick Minacucci to Sean Wilson is back. Additionally, they're returning 3 out of 5 starters on the offensive line and their leading rusher. Last year, their defense was abysmal. I mean, just incompetent on that side of the ball. So any improvement for them is a massive jump. But I like what they did this year. Instead of trying to get, as what we used to call them back in the day, like the fallbacks guys that didn't hack it at the D1 big-time FBS schools and try and pick those guys off. They kind of went and picked out proven FCS transfers. Like, hey, these guys were balling at the FCS level. They can play. Let's take them, their experience. Let's get them out there instead of trying to rely on talent as much and trying to get them reps. So I like the Blue Hens there at plus 600. Like I said, this one's quick. That was Conference USA. I mean, if you were coming here for a sole Conference USA breakdown, I'm sorry to break it to you, but we'll move on to the MAC. Probably going to be just as quick. Western Michigan at plus 400 is my pick. I believe that'd be back-to-back for them. We all know the MAC is known for competent quarterback play. So Brock Lowry returning there, probably the best quarterback in the Mid-Atlantic Conference. So going to have to rely on them. And then also they have Jalen Buckley. That's the running back's name. He's going to be there to tote the rock. He's a returning leading rusher. So additionally, some offensive line, familiar faces. I think it's 3 out of 5 starters, and it was like their all-conference left tackle. I believe, like, his name is escaping me right now. Sorry, don't have the all-conference Western Michigan offensive lineman in my bag, but I know he's coming back to play. Defensive side of the ball, Nadami Tucker, he had like 14 and a half sacks last year, like 25 TFLs. He's now playing on Sundays, so that's a lot of production they're going to have to return. But secondary is still returning a lot of starters, and then also they got some they got these 2 transfers. I can't remember where from, but I think combined they have around like 20 sacks. I think they're playing at the FCS level last year. So they went out and won the portal. Honestly, Western Michigan plus 400 might be chalky. But for me, I was like, hey, I love the Broncos. I've loved them since back in the day when they had the whole row the boat with, the Minnesota coach, his name is escaping, PJ Fleck. When PJ Fleck was there, it's kind of where the row the boat started. I really like that program up in Kalamazoo, Michigan. So why not have them go back-to-back in the MAC? All right, Mountain West. I'm going to go kind of out of order of originally how I had this written down in my notes. I'm going to talk about which team I actually think is going to win it first, not like my pick, both from a value standpoint and kind of what I hope to see. But I think UNLV really is the pick here. But the reason why I didn't just go with them, I mean, at plus 275, it's not great odds. It's still, you can still make a profit. You don't go broke making a profit. So, I mean, hey, you see a plus number there. There's a reason why they are the favorite. Dan Mullins and that program, I think they just operate at a different level comparatively to every other school in the Mountain West. Obviously, they have a huge draw of being in Vegas, so close to California, Arizona, Las Vegas, known for these great prep schools, play year-round football. They can get recruits there. It's a cool place to be. Obviously, a lot of history there. Dan Mullins knows how to recruit. That's for damn sure. Don't talk to him about his in-game tactics. You might piss off some Mississippi State and Florida fans, but he knows how to get people on the field. That's for damn sure. But when it comes down to it, if you have to say, hey, I have Jackson Arnold and Alex Orji, and we're down in the fourth quarter. We have to throw the football to get back in this game to win this game. I don't know if you could pick a tandem of previous 5-star, or not even 5. I think Orji is a 4-star, of previous power 4 starters that I would want less than Jackson Arnold and Alex Orji to be the ones I have to rely on to complete pass after pass to get us down the field. Now, if they can play from the lead, if they can run the football, if they can kind of play that way, I don't see a problem for them there. But there's going to be, at some point this year, they're going to have to play from behind. And that'll be I don't want to say a fun thing to watch. It'll definitely be interesting to watch. Now, my actual pick is Hawaii at plus 650. I love Micah Alejado as the quarterback. The prodigal son has returned to Hawaii. He's Hawaiian nationality or ethnicity, obviously from Vegas. It's kind of why I mentioned the Vegas prep schools they had there. And he was, for a while, they've been excited to get him on campus. It's kind of the quarterback that Timmy Chang is like, hey, the offense I ran at Hawaii, the offense I love to run, this is the guy I need to run it. And plus, Timmy Chang and the Rainbow Warriors have been steadily improving every single year, finishing last year at 9-4. It was like 5-7, 5-6 year, then 9-4 last year. This could be the year they kind of bring home the hardware there. I will give you the highlight, though. I know my week 0 predictions are coming up on Friday. They're not going to beat Stanford. I have Stanford laying the 3.5 there. All right, moving to the Pac-12. The revamped Pac-12. It's not the Pac-2 anymore. Oregon State and Washington State are probably pretty happy that it's just not those two conferences, because, gosh, that was pretty depressing to look at those those standings every week, just seeing those two abysmal teams there. Washington State in the lead of the Pac-12 at 3-7. You're like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? The Conference of Champions, I believe it was Bill Walton that called it the Conference of Adonises during a late night Pac-12 basketball game. So it's good to kind of get the revamp there. I'm not going to pick Oregon State or Washington State to win. I have Fresno State at plus 600. Got a lot of production coming back on both sides of the ball. They also have Maryland transfer quarterback Christian Martin out of Highland Springs, Virginia, taking over. He'll be aided by a strong run game, 3 returning starters online, and experience enough at the receiver room. Going to keep it pretty bare there, but I like Fresno State at plus 600. All right, to the SEC we go. And I didn't have them knocked in as my pick for the conference last week, but obviously things have changed over the weekend. But the value I'm seeing right now, who I'm going to pick, is Alabama plus 850. And the way I kind of look at this is DeBoer and the offensive coordinators they've had, Nick Sheridan and then Ryan Grubb this year, they've been kind of playing with one hand behind their back. With Milroe, they could run the football, but he didn't have the skills to run the offense and spread the field like they wanted to. Ty Simpson came in, and he was able to kind of make every throw in the field, kind of had the cerebral there to make those checks and do what they needed to, but they just had no running game. And the words out of camp out of Alabama is that they have made an emphasis on running the football. I think Ryan Grubb press conference 2 weeks ago said, we are going to figure the run game out. Like, we're going to do it, period. So if you want to believe that, you can believe that. I really think Keelan Russell, when I looked at this, I was like, okay, obviously you have Trinidad Chambliss, Arch Manning. If you want to throw Lenora Sellers in there, you have John Mateer. Gunnar Stockton's been consistent and around there. There's probably a quarterbacks I'm missing. Let's think if I can think of one off the top of my head that I've been missing. All right, we'll press. Oh, Sam Levitt at LSU with Lane Kiffin calling plays from. Like, you have a lot of really great quarterbacks or potential for great quarterbacks in there. I think, though, the way I looked at it is if Keelan Russell, if we fast forward to January or February and you told me, like, yeah, Keelan Russell is the best quarterback in the SEC, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not saying he's going to be the best quarterback, but if you told me that, like, give me the foresight to be like, yeah, he's going to be the best quarterback, I would be like, yeah, he has all the skills there. That offense knows how to scheme wide receivers open. Noah Rogers, a receiver that they in NC State, kind of receiver they're missing. Isaiah Horton kind of played that role last year, but this guy's definitely that more like over the top, get the ball when you're in one-on-one coverage receiver they have. He's back healthy. That defense returns a lot of production in their secondary. I believe all 4 or 5 starters are returning, and which plus 2 of them are all Americans. They beefed up the defensive line. They feel comfortable where that. Kane Womack knows how to coach that side of the ball. I'm not worried about the Alabama defense, and I think them trusting Keelan Russell to be the quarterback there says a lot about where this team is going. Next best option there, who I would pick, is Oklahoma at plus 1,000. I'll admit it, hand up. I'm drinking the John Mateer Kool-Aid. I really do believe that thumb hurt him a lot more than it should have last year. Not that it should have, but it hurt him a lot more than they let on. He definitely came back early because they were kind of struggling with the aforementioned Michael Hawkins. So it was good for them to get some stability back in the quarterback position, but at what cost? Kind of hurt his, I don't want to say trajectory or projection, but kind of hurt his image in a sense. I'm not buying into like, oh, he's beefed up, that's why I'm getting on him. No, I mean, like when you look at Arbuckle and the offense they ran at Washington State 2 years ago, what they were able to do there, and kind of what they were doing in the first 3 or 4 games before that thumb injury, I'm impressed with them. And if we know anything about Brent Venables, is his defense is at least going to be a nuisance to play against. I think it's potential to be elite this year. They have some production they need to replace, but Oklahoma and Brent Venables has never had a problem with getting recruits and then coaching them up correctly, especially on that side of the ball. So that's Oklahoma would be my second pick at plus 1,000. Really going into it, talking about the ones that I didn't pick. Go quickly. Texas, there's just too much buzz about how things aren't going right there. There was a whole social media outburst last week about one of the players' parents saying, I'm going to air everything out about what's going on behind the scenes here. I actually have no idea what we're dealing with. Supposedly a lot of frustration with Arch and his production, his play. I think Arch did improve last year, but I think it wasn't as big of an improvement as people thought. Their schedule kind of got easy last year towards the end. And then they have all the talent everywhere else, but I think the pressure is kind of weighing on Sark a little bit. I think they're saying, like, do you guys know how hard it is to win in this league? And they're like, no, but we do know how much we pay you and how much money we give these players to win, and you still can't get it done. So what's going on there? Next, we'll talk about Georgia. I think Georgia's going to go 10-2 and miss out on the SEC championship, and it's really just one theory I have, hypothesis I have. It's Georgia plays 5 dynamic quarterbacks this year. When I say dynamic, I mean someone that can beat you in the air and with their feet. And if you know Kirby Smart, it's the same thing they used to say about Nick Saban. And Kirby was under him, and he's had the same problems as when he has those dual threat dynamic quarterbacks that can really make you pay with your feet. His defense is going to struggle. Additionally, LSU, listen, this theory I have, it's not really a theory. It's proven correct 4 of the last 4 years since the transfer portal has been open. If you look at 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025, I'm trying to remember the teams for each year. I think it was Ole Miss, then it was Colorado, then it was possibly Ole Miss again, and then who was it last year? LSU. Or I mean LSU 2 years ago, and then it could have been Ole Miss last year. Anyways, it was the number 1 team in transfer portal rankings has missed the playoff that following season. So LSU is the number 1 team for 2026. And if that theory holds true, they'll miss the playoffs. Ergo, they won't be able to win the SEC championship, giving them the automatic bid. I think there's just a lot of noise there. I don't think Lane Kiffin is going to be a complete disaster at LSU. I think it's just a year too early. A lot of moving parts, a lot of different things going on. Plus, it's a harder schedule. The biggest knock also on Lane Kiffin was like, hey, he can't really win the big one. He won last year in the regular season against Georgia. That was a big win for them. But at the end of the day, I think it was more so the luck of the perfect storm of getting Trinidad Chambliss there, and him becoming who he is. I think they have Austin Simmons there throughout the entire year. I don't think they're as a successful team. So there's like 6 other teams I could probably mention for the SEC of having a chance to win, but we'll stop there. And then we're going to finish up with the Sun Belt, or the Fun Belt, as I like to call it. I'm going to keep it simple. If you know me, I'm a JMU fan. Someone called me a JMU homer. Billy Napes, man, that guy can recruit. That guy can recruit. From a roster standpoint, I don't think there's a roster that really stacks up in the Sun Belt with James Madison. Um, However, looking in the future, I think that's going to kind of taper off in a sense as James Franklin is coming into the state of Virginia, coaching at Virginia Tech. He's going to be able to pull some of those in-state recruits, those 3 stars that were getting kind of overlooked, not fully recruited, that JMU would snatch up. I think now are going to kind of go to Virginia Tech to be developed there. But yeah, JMU, I think it's plus 275 for the Dukes. It's hard to really even talk about the production in the sense of like what they're doing. They had a lot of offensive line, actually. It's kind of homegrown, but all skill positions, their defense, clear transfers. Listen, Billy Napier has never had a problem with getting the talent, so I trust him with that. It's going to be the X's and O's, but I think there's like the talent discrepancy between the rosters is going to get them to a spot where they're at least competing for the Sun Belt Championship. And do you know much about the Sun Belt? You always know the East is tougher than the West. So if you come out of the East, it's a pretty good chance that you're going to win it. However, my second pick is Louisiana Raging Cajuns. I like them at plus 85. Last year they made a call to the bullpen, went with Lunch Winfield to take over at quarterback. And since that moment, and I think it was last 5 games he started, they scored north of 34 points a game. And plus they're in that Western Division, which is a much easier path to the championship game, kind of like what they bring there. But overall, just excited for the Sun Belt football. I think if you talk to people, especially fans of the American Conference teams, they'll say American hands down is the best conference. I think that gap is tightening. I think the gap is tightening. I don't think it's just the Sun Belt. I think the Mountain West definitely has a chance to close the gap with UNLV kind of leading charge there. But also the Pac-12, with Boise going over, I think they have a chance to close the gap as well. So, all right, just went through all the conferences there. Going to kind of talk about, just do like an off-season recap, I guess. So let's see, where do we want to go through first? I already mentioned the Brendan Sorsby case. That was pretty crazy. I mean, turns out guy was just throwing out parlays left and right. His agent was like, don't worry about this. No one's going to figure it out. Someone figured it out. He's like, you have the leverage here. Turns out he doesn't have the leverage. So I go to the NFL. NFL's like, hey, we don't want you either, man. I think it's kind of a tough break. Kind of looked like he was getting his big break this year. Like he didn't have the best of years at Cincinnati. I just still remember that Cincinnati-Nebraska game to open the season. They're making their way to a comeback, and he just throws – cover 2, receiver to the far side of the sideline on a go route, and he just throws just a lollipop of a pass to try and get it to him when he didn't even have to stretch the field. They had so much time on the clock, and they were kind of making their drive. Just a bad decision. I was kind of turned off from there. It's funny how those first couple of weeks you always see one thing, and you're like, yep, that's sticking with me for the rest of the season. And that guy can like go out and like literally have a Heisman year after that. And you're just like, nope, I still remember that one play. So that guy's never going to do it for me. But obviously he had a pretty good season to finish out the year, was kind of the hot name in the transfer portal. I think a lot of that also was, I don't want to say the market wasn't great. I mean, you had Sam Levitt in there who really produced in 2024, and then obviously he was injured last year, but in the games before his injury was putting up some really good numbers. DJ Lagway was there, but he was kind of like a failure in a sense of like what his potential was supposed to be. I think a lot of that can contribute to the toxicity of the Florida program and not put all the blame on DJ Lagway. But those were kind of like the 3 major names out there. Bo Prabula, obviously, he also went to UVA after transferring to Missouri, but I don't think his time in Missouri did him much favors. Calandria going to Nebraska. I'm trying to think of the other big names in the transfer portal of like guys like, hey, we're kind of hired mercenary, like merchant starters. Yeah, I think he was just kind of like the best of that bunch. And in all honesty, I would have taken Sam Levitt over him if there wasn't the injury concern with the Lisfranc surgery and kind of like what he's going through. So I think he was made to be a lot hotter of a commodity, but just terrible situation. I mean, obviously he did to himself doing that, But it sounds like he got some really bad advice from his representation, and now he's in a situation where he's not playing football for a whole year, which could have been completely avoided. So, what else? Obviously, the most recent thing going on is the NFL players coming back to college. I'm not going to harp on this one too much because it seems like everyone's sharing the same sentiment. Like, what are we doing, man? We got guys that are literally taking NFL snaps, watch them on NFL Network, playing in preseason games, and they're like, "Yep, I'm in the transfer portal now." Like, what are we doing? A really interesting take on it. Shout out the Cover 3 podcast. Shout out Bud Elliott because this was kind of his idea. Not his idea, more so like his take on it. He was the first person I at least saw like call it out. He's kind of under the idea, the theory that the NCAA made, lack of a better term, such a shitty like proposal to kind of show like the problems that they're having there. And I don't want to say corruption, but kind of corruption in these local judges and what's going on. By not saying the 2022 class was eligible for this 5-and-5 year, which in all honesty, if you look back at it, they should have been eligible for it because this would be their 5th year. And then Lane Kiffin kind of brought up a good point of like, hey, these guys are given bad information, and said they weren't going to be afforded an extra year. So a lot of them went to the draft when if they knew they had an extra year, they would have stayed, which is true and valid. But I do appreciate the SEC and the Big Ten kind of coming out and being like, hey, we're not allowing this in here. When I first saw the Big Ten do it, I kind of got worried that the SEC wasn't going to do it, just because the SEC, this is still like the one thing I don't understand the SEC does, and maybe it's changed. I don't think it has. The SEC has this policy where if you transfer, and it probably hasn't changed, but it's probably not a thing anymore because they're ironing out the transfer portal schedule. But they used to have this policy where if you transferred in the spring portal, you couldn't transfer to another SEC school. And I get it because you're kind of like protecting the teams in the SEC of like, hey, this guy's went through all spring practice and installs. We're not going to let him go to another team that's competing for a conference championship with him, with his previous team, and give him all that information. Like I get it from that standpoint, but like from a holistic of the SEC and the conference, then it's like, okay, if these really talented players aren't getting what they think they deserve, we're not going to keep them in the conference. We're actually going to make it so they can't go to another SEC school and leave the conference. I didn't understand that from a conference standpoint. I get it from protecting the individual teams. So I was worried it was going to be one of those situations where like a small worry that SEC is like, well, we have that policy. We'll allow NFL players to come back because Big Ten doesn't follow those same rules. But seeing the two big conferences kind of abide by those rules and be like, yeah, no, we're not doing this. That made me happy to see. And then also, like it's been stated by all the personalities out there, like this is a one-time thing that we'll have to deal with this. Like next year, these rules are in play. Like next year, we're not going to deal with this. So once we're done with it this year, we'll be good to go, or we'll be out of the woods. But definitely weird times. Just shows like how much the NCAA has fallen. Like the NCAA, like, oh my God, what they like used to bring so much fear into like programs just because of like their reach and what they could do to people. And then now like people are just laughing at them, being like, hey, cool, you said that. Awesome. We'll go to if we're in, freaking Texas Tech, we'll go to Lubbock County judge or city judge and just ask him for his advice on this and he'll pass it so we can then play. Like it's just crazy to think where it's at. And then one more shameless plug on that note. A lot of people, I had to call it out. A lot of people were getting on Nick Saban when he went on to Congress and said like, hey, we have to have some guardrails. We have to figure out some rules here. Like this is get crazy. Everyone's just like, Nick Saban, man, he just hates it because the rules aren't benefiting him in Alabama anymore. He used to bend the rules so much. Like he's just salty now because the Big Ten has won 3 conference championship or 3 national championships in a row. And kind of turns out like, oh shit, we almost just had NFL players coming back to play college because we didn't have these aforementioned guardrails that we need to set up. So definitely if you were one of those people that are like, yeah, no, Nick Saban's right here. I don't think it's anything about his bias. You kind of feel vindicated in that sense of like, yeah, this all came true. But it seems like the powers that need to are making the right decisions and putting the right things in place. So these aren't problems anymore. Trying to think anything else major. We'll mention this team just because shock to no one, and this is the first time you're hearing this. I'm sorry to break this news to you, but we didn't mention Notre Dame because they're not in a conference. Very proudly not in a conference. But what's kind of the ceiling for Notre Dame this year, and what's the floor? I think the floor is 10-2, and they missed the playoffs just like they were last year, and the ceiling's national championship. The problem with Notre Dame is you're not really going to know for certain which type of team they are until the playoffs, until you kind of get that full sample size. And even then, depending on how it all shakes out, they may get a very favorable matchup in the first round where you're like, yeah, we still don't know if they're a good team or not. My gut tells me they're a good team. CJ Carr is obviously a very good player. I mean, he's the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman. Defense, maybe the best in the country. They probably have the best defensive secondary in the country, at least the best defensive secondary player. So there's a lot to like about them, but it's just so much unknowns. And I'll mention this real quick. It's a quick pivot. I love the troll job that Sig does, and he doesn't have to do it anymore because, I mean, he's a national champion winner. What he's accomplished, he doesn't have to do it anymore. But the troll job he does, where he's saying like, sure, we'll play Notre Dame, but I mean, they had to come here twice. We'll go there once, and it's just like, hey, SEC doesn't schedule anybody. Like, no, we play big boy football up here too, and we don't whine when we lose. He was whining 2 years ago after Notre Dame kind of whooped up on them. I will mention that. It'll be interesting to see if they lose a game this year, if he whines. I'm not sure if he will. I don't think it's really in his DNA. But there was a little bit of whining after that Notre Dame loss. And then additionally, like, they're out of conference schedule. Like that's where the people get frustrated. Like, we get it. You're playing 9 conference games. And if you want to say that Big Ten is a better conference than the SEC, all right, cool. I don't think 9 conference games against the Big Ten with Temple, I think Kennesaw State, and like, I don't know, like Old Dominion, at least that might have been the ones last year, but a combination of those teams, I think one of them might be Western Kentucky this year, matches up to a schedule. Like, even look at at Ohio State's kind of I don't want to say like the flagship like program in that conference, but yeah, kind of the one everyone looks at. Like, they're playing Texas out of conference. Michigan, who was the Big Ten number 2 for a while, is playing Oklahoma out of conference. USC, as much flack as they get, they renewed their deal, their contract with Notre Dame, where they're playing them every year, traveling to their place, and then the next year getting them at home. Like, these other schools are kind of being like, yeah, this is kind of the way of it. But in all honesty, what is the reason for Indiana and SIG to want to play a tough out-of-conference schedule? There's been no signs yet of it rewarding programs, so why do it? I'm not saying there's been a sign of it hurting programs either, but I'm just saying, like, I think Texas last year at 9-3 should have gotten in? No. I think for the most part, they kind of got all the right teams in there. But for Texas, like, it will take a 9-3 season for a team like Texas this year, and for them to get rewarded to then make the playoffs, for people to be like, yeah, we can schedule out of conference tough opponents. That's kind of what we're waiting for. And then I'll get this take out, because this might be the last time I can get this take out. I was really hoping, I was like, hey, I'm not going to talk about this one. I'm going to wait till next off season, because this will be, one, it's a great off season topic. But 2, I was like, it will be like even more steam and more traction will be around it. It'll be an even more contentious conversation to have if this is the case again for next year. But it doesn't look like it's going to be the case. I mean, and I'll just get to the takes so you know what I'm talking about. But all right, you have Freeman at Notre Dame, Sark at Texas, Lanning at Oregon, and Cristobal at Miami. If you had to pick, and you can say which one's the first, whatever, and the way I have it phrased is, which one's the first coach out of those 4 to leave their current program without winning a national championship? So obviously, if Miami, Notre Dame, Texas, or Oregon wins this year, they get removed from the debate. So, because they won a national championship there, they can then leave. What's the first coach? And the reason why it's such an interesting thing to work through is because you're talking about 4 programs, and Miami is a little bit newer to it. But the way Cristobal has that team and program set up right now, I'm confident in saying this. you're talking about 4 programs that are top 15 at the lowest every year where they finish up. Um, but they all have this stigma of not being able to get over the hump. So you'd be kind of crazy to fire one of these coaches because they continuously finish in the top 15, pretty much are either getting the playoffs or just missing the playoffs. And also, I think all four have playoff game wins. So uh, I'm trying to think. I don't think Oregon is. I was going to say all four were one play away from being in the national championship. So I don't think Oregon has that though, because that Rose Bowl against Ohio State, that was the quarterfinals. So, but still, I mean, like they've all won playoff games. They have all shown their ability to recruit and to coach to a high level, just not the pinnacle level. So if you had to pick one of those coaches that's going to leave their current program, and it could be because they got fired, because I mean Sarkis, he went to the NFL, or people talk about, oh, Sark's going to jump ship to go to Bama if that job opens up again. Like, what's the case there? If you had to pick one of those coaches, who would it be? I don't think it's going to be Cristobal. I think Cristobal, he's Miami alum, loves Miami. He's Miami. Um, Miami loves him too. I think if it would take some pretty bad years for them to pivot from Cristobal. Oregon, it kind of seems like Dan Lanning's their guy. I mean, Phil Knight has pretty much all but said, I mean, even have said it vocally, like, no, I'm spending money until we win a national championship. I need to see one before I die. And they feel like Dan Lanning's the guy that's going to get them there. So I'm not sure it'll be him. The two I really focus on then are Freeman and Sark, because they're both two that kind of get talked about making the jump to the NFL. Also, like, it'd be interesting to see what happens if the Ohio State job opened up. And I'm not saying Ohio State's going to fire Ryan Day. Maybe Ryan Day wants to go try it in the NFL. Maybe Ryan Day is like, hey, I won a national championship and like I'm kind of content now. Like I've climbed that mountain. I don't like it when my family gets called these terrible names and I get threatened. So reach the highest level, and now I'm just going to go make a crap ton of money talking on Big Ten Network or Big Noon Kickoff every Saturday instead of having to face this pressure. Ohio State opens up. Do you think Freeman jumps there, goes to the school he played at? That'll definitely be interesting to see. I'm really curious though, like how many more years, if you're Oregon, can you go with Lanning before you're kind of starting to have the conversation? Because I don't even think they're having the conversation yet. I think they're just like, hey, we're going to be fine. We lost to Ohio State, who won the national championship. We lost to Indiana, who won the national championship. Both those teams we played earlier in the year, and Ohio State we won. In Indiana, it was a close game that we were definitely in the entire time. It kind of seems like it's Oregon's year, and this could be a fourth year the Big Ten wins the national championship. But if they don't, like if they get, imagine if it's another case where it'd have to be another Big Ten team. I'm trying to think who would it be. This would probably get them on the hottest of seats. Imagine if Oregon and USC, they play in the regular season, Oregon wins by 2 touchdowns, 14 points. Say it's like, I don't know, 34-20. Oregon wins. And then they play, and USC makes the playoff, and Oregon makes the playoff, and they play in the quarterfinals, and USC beats Oregon. Like at that point, you kind of have to have like this conversation of like, all right, so you can beat this team in the regular season. When it comes to the playoffs, all bets are off. You can't do it. And then also with it being Lincoln Riley, like that would start some uncomfortable conversations, I think. I think still it's probably 2-3 years away before they start really being like, hey, what are we doing here? Do we have the guy, Because at the end of the day, like you can admit, hey, we don't have the guy. I'm not saying this is true, but you could say like Dan Lanning's not the guy to get us over the top. But if he's not the guy to get you over the top, okay, then like who is? Who are you going to go out there and nab right now and be like, yep, this is the guy because he's a proven winner? Like who are you going to be able to steal? Possibly DeBoer, but I mean like he hasn't won either, and I think DeBoer's kind of, from what I've heard, waiting for the USC job to open up. But like who else is really out there? Maybe Lane Kiffin. That would probably be the funniest thing possible is for Lane Kiffin to go to a Big Ten school like Oregon and just hear him completely flip sides and be like, yeah, Big Ten. I've always thought this, I was in the SEC, so I just had to say it. But I always thought the Big Ten was a tougher conference. I never thought there was this huge discrepancy. That would be really funny to see him. Now I'm kind of rooting for that. And just like the images of him hanging out in Oregon and being like, oh, like I can see the ESPN articles now. Lane Kiffin went to Oregon deep into the forest to escape the toxicity of social media, some place that he used to find comforting. Now he can't stand it. Let's dive into how Lane Kiffin has recreated himself in the wilderness in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. That'd be actually really funny. Oh, I don't think they do. I mean, they probably have hot yoga up there, but I mean, you have to do like you have to do yoga outside with the trees. I feel like that'd be like, we would have to do that. All right. We got to the point where I'm talking about Lane Kiffin and his yoga destinations, locations. I'm sure there's stuff I missed, but I give you 10 conference championship winners. Going to run through them one more time with the odds. American Conference, UTSA, plus 450. ACC, Miami, plus 150. Louisville is my flyer, plus 800. Big Ten, Oregon, plus 260. Don't really have a flyer in there. USC is kind of tasty, but I'm not taking it. BYU in the Big 12 at plus 550. Then my flyer in there is the Mountaineers at plus 5,000. Conference USA, Delaware Blue Hens at plus 600. The MAC, Western Michigan at plus 400. Mountain West, Hawaii at plus 650, but UNLV plus 275. There's still some value there. I just don't like the quarterback situation. Pac-12 is Fresno State at plus 600. SEC is Alabama at plus 850. And then Sun Belt, you have JMU at plus 275 with my flyer of the Raging Cajuns at plus 850. Appreciate you guys tuning in. If you stayed to the very end, thank you. Please like, comment, subscribe, leave your comments for questions for next week's video. As I said, Friday, I will give you the week 0 picks. Saturday, you can find me going live Saturday night after week 0 is concluded. That Hawaii-Stanford game would probably be the last game, if I remember correctly. Then we'll get on our normal schedule Monday. We're kind of going to go through week 1 breakdown for some of the bigger games, and then also answering some questions. But appreciate it. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you Friday.